Russia, under Vladimir Putin, has launched what U.S. officials describe as the most significant military action in Europe in 77 years. From the north, the east, and the south, Russia has attacked Ukraine with airstrikes, missiles, and troops. Ukraine says that at least 57 people have been killed and 170 wounded. Elements of the Russian army, one of the largest in the world, are heading toward Kyiv, the capital. And the U.S. fears the goal is to take over the country and evict the government. Nick Schifrin begins our coverage.
In a European capital, the full weight of the Russian military. What the U.S. calls the initial phase of a full-scale invasion, with Russian helicopters flying low over residential rooftops and to the outskirts of Kyiv to seize a military airport. Military vehicles pouring into southern Ukraine, and Russian troops taking over the Chernobyl nuclear site on their way to sack the capital. Ukraine and the U.S. say the Russian military is advancing on at least three axes, from Belarus in a pincer movement toward Kyiv, from the south and Russian-occupied Crimea, and from the east into the country's second-largest city, Kharkiv, where the war entered living rooms. This is an unexploded rocket in the aftermath of a direct hit on a residential complex. In this city of 1.4 million, the only safe place was the subway, where children distract themselves as their parents fear for the future and loved ones hold on tight.
It's normal people who don't want war, who suffer. We want to live in peace, to go to work, build our families, develop our country. We just want a peaceful sky over our heads, instead of hiding as rats in holes.
But the vast majority of targets Ukraine's military. A senior U.S. defense official says more than 160 Russian missiles launched from the air, sea, and from inside Russia punished Ukraine's bases, airfields, and air defenses. It sparked an exodus. Cars filled Kyiv streets with families fleeing west away from the invasion. The highway out of town, complete gridlock. 29-year-old Oksana Matiash stopped at a gas station to tell us how she felt.
One of the news media that I checked, there was a huge headline that Putin started war in Ukraine. I think that was the fastest in my life that I needed to pack my things. And I just took my hoodie, one sweater, one pair of jeans, my computer, and that's it. All of my belongings are left in Kyiv. It's really scary, but I do believe in Ukraine and its leadership, in our armed forces.
But in Mariupol, an industrial city near the coast, others had nowhere to go.
I'm alone at work. Where will I run? Where do I go? Tell me, please. My God.
And today is just day one. Russia has kept in reserve the vast majority of the more than 150,000 troops on Ukraine's border who are waiting, posing for cameras, and poised to further invade.
Putin is the aggressor. Putin chose this war. And now he and his country will bear the consequences.
At the White House today, President Biden unveiled sanctions designed to punish Russia long term. The U.S. has now blocked the assets of all of Russia's largest banks, including the largest, Sberbank. The U.S. sanctioned Russian oligarchs who have, quote, enriched themselves at the expense of the Russian state. And the U.S. banned exports of technology with any American intellectual property, including semiconductors used in cars, smartphones, and missiles.
We're going to stunt the ability to finance and grow the Russian military. We're going to impose and we're going to impair their ability to compete in high-tech 21st century economy.
President Biden warned again that gas prices could rise and urged oil companies not to exploit global instability.
My administration is using every tool at its disposal to protect American families and businesses from rising prices at the gas pump. You know, we're taking active steps to bring down the cost. We are closely monitoring energy supplies for any disruption.
American sanction timed with European export controls, announced by European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen.
Our measures will weaken Russia's technological position in key areas, actually from which the elite makes most of their money. And this ranges from high-tech components to cutting-edge software. This will also seriously degrade the Russian economy in all areas in the future.
And the United Kingdom introduced new restrictions on wealthy Russians' access to British banks. It banned Aeroflot from British airspace and is working to exclude Russia from the SWIFT financial system. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson.
Putin will stand condemned in the eyes of the world and of history. He will never be able to cleanse the blood of Ukraine from his hands.
And the West fears Putin could expand the conflict into NATO. So the U.S. announced today it sent 7,000 members of an armored brigade combat team to Germany. In addition to F-35s and Apache helicopters arriving today along NATO's eastern flank. And the 3,000 additional soldiers recently sent to Poland. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg.
We have increased our presence in the eastern part of the alliance with thousands of more troops, ships and planes over the last weeks. To send a very clear message that an attack on one ally will trigger the response from the whole alliance. And we do so not to provoke a conflict, but to prevent the conflict.
Inside Russia, Putin is preventing protest. Moscow police arrested hundreds of demonstrators calling for an end to a war that Putin said was to, quote, demilitarize and denazify Ukraine, even though President Volodymyr Zelensky is Jewish and his great-uncles died in the Holocaust. Last night, Putin also obliquely threatened nuclear war.
Whoever would try to stop us and further create threats to our country, to our people, should know that Russia's response will be immediate and lead you to such consequences that you have never faced in your history. We are ready for any outcome.
Despite it all, today Zelensky offered diplomacy.
We underline that it wasn't Ukraine who chose the path of war, but Ukraine is offering to get back to the path of peace.
And Ukrainians are offering something else. In the face of invasion, hundreds lined up outside a hospital to show their resilience and donate their blood.
And tonight, President Zelensky has ordered a general mobilization of all citizens in Ukraine in response to the Russian invasion. Judy?
And Nick, on that point, what are the Ukrainians able to do to defend themselves?
Yeah, Ukrainian officials I talked to do detail a series of successes that they describe against the Russian invasion. They talk about tank battles in the northeast, mechanized units confronting convoys in the east, fighting along the Black Sea, and taking prisoners along the south as well. They are better trained. They have more equipment. And they say, senior officials in Ukraine talk to me about how they are better led because they have been fighting for the last 8 years in the east against Russian-backed separatists. But the bottom line, Judy, Ukraine's military is badly outgunned. Half the military is in the east, which means they're spread thin throughout the rest of the country. And there's little stopping Russia from destroying Ukraine's air defenses, little stopping Russia from coming down from Belarus, and therefore little stopping Russia from threatening the capital, Kyiv itself.
Nick Schifrin, and we will see you again in just a few minutes.